Hey guys, thought I'd do one of my occasional check-ins where I try to explain what the hell's going on with the schedule so you can see it here on the screen. And, well, first of all, it can help you tell what time stuff usually goes up, but also it can kind of explain the slots themselves. So, first off, we have the main schedule, which is that from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. every hour, one of the 6 main playthroughs has an episode normally. We have Hand of Fate 2, first thing in the morning. This is all Pacific time, and Hand of Fate 2 is currently in the indie slot. The idea there being that when I finish Hand of Fate 2, another indie game replaces that. Yes, we can argue until the end of the time what indie means, but at the very least it means not AAA and probably not AA or something like that. Next up at noon, we have Kingdom Come: Deliverance. This is my Western RPG slot. Very tentative. I haven't actually stuck with this idea yet, but I did follow up Elex with Kingdom Come: Deliverance, and I kind of want to stick to that just to keep it going, because it's easy to lose track of having a Western RPG thing in the slot, and it'll give me an excuse to go through old games. Although the annoying problem with Western RPGs is they're so monstrously long that, like, other Western RPGs will come out while I'm doing the other one, and I'll just miss things, which is like maybe one of these days I'll get around to Tides of Numenera, but it's like, yeah, like Torment will just come out while I'm playing another thing, and yeah, I can do like 4 a year, I think, because of how long they are. They're like 100 episodes every time. Zelda's the Patreon slot. You can support me on patreon.com/SebastianSB, which is literally how I'm able to do this as a job, because YouTube has never made enough money that it alone was enough. But when I launched the Patreon, that's what it was able to make me quit my job and do this full-time, because it actually started making more money than that, which is insane. So thank you for your support, like always. What happens is when I'm nearing the end, I'll binge record the rest of a Patreon game until it's done. And then I'll be like, okay, that's when the finale is going to air. And then in the days running up to the finale, I will then put up the nomination poll so that everyone that's a super supporter at the $15 a month or more can nominate any game they want, really, within some level of reason, because some games are unrecordable due to the limitations involved. But most things people ask for, in fact, basically everything anyone's ever asked for, has been totally fine. And then a couple days later, still before the finale, everyone gets to vote on the list that other people nominated, and then that becomes the next Patreon game. I do this all before the finale so that I can air the first episode of the new game immediately, like the day after the finale, with no break in between. It throws some people for a loop, because some people scramble to get on Patreon right when the finale is happening, and then it's too late and they have to wait for the next game, which I get, but at the same time, the alternative is to, like, have like a week off between every Patreon game, which I don't know if is the best either, so this is how I do it. Next is Monster Hunter World. It's not a slot, really. I just have 2 open slots where I can play anything at 2 p.m. 3 p.m. is Pipe Push Paradise in the puzzle slot, so that's the rotating thing where when I finish one puzzle game, it gets then replaced by another puzzle game. Puzzle can mean all sorts of things. It's these Sokoban games and I play all these like pure mechanics, no story games where you like push around blocks or click on tiles or whatever the hell for the puzzles, or you line up lasers. Or I play like first-person puzzle story hybrids like Portal, or Myst and things like that. Or I'll play like adventure games where the level of puzzle can be very tenuous at best at times, or very involved, and you don't really know until you get into it. But I count those all as one spectrum that is the puzzle slot. And hopefully it works out, and sometimes it doesn't, because I totally thought Night in the Woods was going to be a puzzle game, because it looked like an adventure game, and it turned out to just be talking for 40 episodes, which I loved, but was weird. But aside from that, it's worked out. And then last 4 p.m. we have Remothered, which is the thing I'm playing with Andrew right now. Whenever I do a full playthrough with Andrew, it'll probably slot into the schedule somewhere, just because my time has to, but the time I spent recording usually needs to fit the schedule somewhere or something. Otherwise, it's like I have to do even more work, and you can see just by video duration that these things take up a lot of time. So that's the basic setup. So there's 4 slots right now and 2 open things, basically in a 6-game schedule, where generally I can just pick whatever I want, but I maintain these slots because I want a certain balance. I started this channel with like Dark Souls games and stuff like that, and then went on to Western RPGs, but I also separately, because of Grimrock and then and like Portal and Talos Principle and Witness and stuff like that. I grew an audience for puzzle games, and I just really like indie games, like more so on average than AAA games on average, and so I just want to keep them on the schedule. And I found that when I was chasing games around and I'd play like some AAA games or something, like so many games are so padded and long, especially AAA games, that certain genres will dominate my entire schedule if I allow them to. So I make these slots to make sure there's always a puzzle game and always an indie game and stuff like that in the schedule, because if I don't reserve those slots, then the 17,000 AAA games that come out every month that are all 30 hours long will quickly fill the entire schedule, and all the variety will just be wrung out of it. So that's why the slots came into being, and I think the channel's been better off ever since I put those in. So that's the part you probably understand already. They generally come out at the normal time of day. If they're not on time, it's usually not because they're canceled or not coming out that day, although that day can go in air quotes because I don't know what that day means for you, because if these videos normally come out at like 9 o'clock at night your time, then you might be asleep soon, and then from your perspective, I guess they were canceled for that day and coming out tomorrow. But every 24, generally all these videos will come out every 24 hours, usually on time, sometimes delayed a few hours. That's not because of delay. I mean, it is because of delay. What am I saying? It's not that they're canceled or pushed back or skipping a day. Usually what happens is just logistical issues. Videos take time to render and upload, and then also when you upload them, they take time to process on YouTube, which could take an hour or sometimes even hours for the video to become available even after it's finished uploading. So who knows? If I had a staff, then I could just pass my recordings off to people and they could immediately start like editing and rendering them and uploading them. But I have to do all of my day's recordings, then after my day is over, start editing all of it, then render it overnight, then upload it in the morning. And so huge margin of error can be introduced at any given time for a variety of logistical reasons, because I am a one-person team, but generally stuff will come out every day. And so you should not be assumed that anything's canceled, because I don't know if I've missed a single day for any Let's Plays for like 3 months now, according to my schedule, so it's pretty consistent. Then things get confusing. We have the miscellaneous schedule down at the bottom. This is where a lot of the confusing things comes in. So first of all, we have Let's Try and the miscellaneous multiplayer, which is completely, totally undefined nonsense. I kind of just dump those at 12:30. Are kind of arbitrarily. Let's Tries are part of my ongoing goal. Like, I have this huge flood of indie games and codes and stuff like that coming in my inbox all the time, and I want to cover them, and I feel guilty about not covering stuff. Some stuff I'll put on my to-do list because I'm like, I want to do a series on that, but other ones I'm like, nah, and this isn't gonna happen. This mech racing game, I'm probably just but I want to cover it. I want to do a little video on it. It looks neat, but I probably won't do a full series on it, but I want to use the code and stuff like that. So I try to do like a daily video if I can for Let's Tries. It's never really worked, but it's been an ongoing goal for like the last 2 or 3 years to maintain like a daily Let's Try stream of like every day another Let's Try comes out at the same time. Might make them shorter on average for some of the ones that don't necessarily need as much time, just so I can keep that more consistent. But they come out when they come out. The other one's miscellaneous multiplayer, which is just nonsense. I'm somebody who normally like starts a series and then records it every day, and then it has a finale and it's over and then it ends, and that's how most of my playthroughs work. But the moment you start playing multiplayer games or collaborating, it gets really confusing and messy and weird. And so basically I just have a Discord channel where I talk with like Wanderbot and Durf and Birdcatcher and Andrew and other people, and you'll just like meet up and be like, all right, we're playing Mount Your Friends today, and we'll just like record for a while, and we just do with that footage as we want. And every time we play a multiplayer game, I don't know if we'll be playing it again tomorrow or next week or never. So if you wonder what's going on with that stuff, yeah, I don't know if we'll have a finale for every time I do a multiplayer game. I don't know if there will be a finale. Generally, if I'm sitting down in a room with Andrew playing like a game that has a campaign, we are doing it for the intention of playing it from start to finish assuming it's not a let's try. Like that's the point, like a Sonic game or Remothered and stuff like that, or 999. But when it's like an online multiplayer thing, it's a bunch of people, even if it is a campaign, I can't, like Grim Dawn, I don't necessarily guarantee or even really expect that it'll ever reach a finale or an ending. And I want you guys to understand that too, and be forewarned if that's what's important to you. Oftentimes when it's multiplayer stuff, it's just four people jabbering on about random nonsense and screwing around and having fun. So I don't know if the camp, it's probably not the best way to experience the game for the purposes of being like immersed and knowing it from front to back anyway. So if you're putting up with our style of commentary in those scenarios, you probably aren't that attached to them necessarily reaching a finale anyway, so it probably works out. But that's how that works. I generally treat all of the multiplayer stuff as a rotating slot. So like I'll often like have Pit People and Mount Your Friends and Deep Rock Galactic and stuff like that. I'll put them in a rotation for whatever number of videos I have available, where it'll be like, okay, today's DRG, tomorrow's Pit People, tomorrow's Mount Your Friends, and then I'll loop back around to DRG, and it'll be like whatever games I have in my pool, because I don't want, I'm trying to avoid feast or famine things with the thing, because like sometimes we'll record 2 or 3 multiplayer games the same day, or we'll record 4 different games the same week, and then the next week we won't record anything, or we'll just record one thing a few times and stuff like that. And I don't want the schedule to suddenly balloon out to be like, here's 12 videos because I've lately played 4 multiplayer games and they're ballooning out the schedule and it's just a giant flood. But then like 3 days later there's no multiplayer videos and the schedule's tiny again, and it's like, well, all those videos I was spamming would have definitely got less views because there was too many at once. And also I'm just flooding people with a thing that is like, the multiplayer stuff's generally not the most popular stuff to begin with, so it's like I'm spamming the least popular type of content on the channel basically, which doesn't work very well. So yeah, that's my plan, is I generally like I throttle it so that it'll come out at a specific rate. So whenever there's multiplayer stuff happening, generally one will come out every single day for a while, but it'll be rotating between the different games. And so it just don't... It's confusing, because like at the same time, whenever you stop seeing a multiplayer game, it might be gone forever. But also, don't immediately assume that, because it might just be that it's coming out every 3 days because it's rotating with 2 other multiplayer games. Maybe. It's confusing. It's a mess. It's not organized. That's what happens when you mix a whole bunch of different people together. Which is not to say that all multiplayer stuff is treated that way, because at any given moment, just like with Andrew, I might like sit down with Wanderbot and like record a full playthrough of some game for the purpose of actually doing it that way, and in that case it can be handled as a normal slot or something. It's a mess. It's a mess. The reason I restrict things into specific things like this also is just to not make myself just record way too much shit, because of course back in the day I used to sometimes just have 10 playthroughs going on, and then it's blah blah, although there's some of the stuff shows signs of going that way anyway. Then there's Dungeons & Dragons and the podcast. We try to record both of them once a week. D&D we record for like 3 hours, and Wander usually splits it into 2 episodes that are 90 minutes or less each, and so that usually comes out twice a week, except for when we don't record that week, or people don't get files transferred correctly, or logistical shit happens. But usually it's twice a week. I can't even guarantee what days, because it's just been whatever. It's just when there's this many people mixed in with something logistically, and all of the people involved are the people who record their own stuff. Like, none of us have a staff that just does the file management and editing and takes it off our hands, which is what makes some channels so regular by comparison. Like, I'm super jealous of, like, was it Rooster Teeth and Achievement Hunter? They have like the people that make the content, and then there's the people that just are in the office and they're never on camera or never recording, but they're just dealing with all the files, and that's probably why stuff like that gets so consistent. Then there's the podcast. Andrew and I meet up every Tuesday to record, usually like Let's Plays or Let's Tries or whatever, and then if we usually have been recording a podcast on those days, and then at some point in the following days it comes out, and that's really all there is to it. D&D and podcasts don't even have like consistent release time of day, let alone what day they come out, but they're there when they're there. This whole thing's a mess. So if you ever ask why I'm not covering this or why I'm not covering that, yeah, this kind of explains some of it, which is that like I have a super overstuffed schedule, and even with how much stuff I cover, it's like impossible to cover everything. Like every 5 minutes, like here's Hellblade, and here's Hollow Knight, and here's Shadow of the Colossus remake, and the West of Loathing, and like there's so many games that people will talk about that just I'm like maybe someday and maybe not. I can't tell you or not, because the problem here is that I finish games. Like this is the price you pay if you're somebody who does Let's Plays of games and tries to finish games, is that games are super goddamn long and takes dozens of episodes, which I'm fine with, but they also come out super fast, and you just can't. Like you can upload hours and hours of video every day and still not get through all the actual games you're supposed to that people would like you to cover all the time. So if you ever want to know if I'm going to play a particular game, the answer to that question is basically always maybe. The only real guarantees I can think of is that, like, if Cyan makes a new adventure puzzle game, I'll probably play that. And if From Software makes another action RPG, I'll probably play that. And if Jonathan Blow makes another puzzle game, I'll probably play that. Anything else, even sequels to game I've played or DLCs for game I've played, like it's all up in the air. It's so the logistics of trying to cover everything is so impossible the moment you try to actually set about it, which is part of the reason I have the Let's Try slot, is that many of the Let's Tries I do are random games that I never was going to cover. Basically, it's like, oh yeah, look at that. Yeah, I'll do a little video of that, sure. And I was never planning on doing a series of it. But there's also like some tearful farewells in there. Like there's some games on Let's Tries that serve the purpose of being like games that were on my to-do list for a long time, and I'm like finally like giving it the axe. I'm like, no, I don't think it's gonna happen. It's been on my to-do list for way too long, and the to-do list only grows faster than it shrinks because new stuff and other eye-catching things keep getting out. Like soon there will be a video for Thumper, and like I toyed with the idea of having Thumper on my as an actual full playthrough. It was on my whiteboard at one point. Like it's been like on my schedule before, like tentatively, and then stricken from it and stuff like that. And so I'm doing a Let's Try of that in a few days after it's already uploaded, it's scheduled and everything. That just happens. It's just there's so many video games, and I try. So thanks for watching like always, guys. If you like what I do, you can support me on Patreon, and you can affect one of these slots. That's the only real way to do it. I do technically take recommendations, in that you guys telling me about games and stuff like that, I look at them as if I haven't seen them before, because it's part of my job to know about games. So if I hear mention of a game I haven't heard of, then I will like generally look at it. So yes, like that type of recommendation works, in that you make me aware of said game, and it might make it on a list somewhere, and maybe that'll somewhere down the line lead to it being covered somehow, maybe. But the most direct power the audience has is through the Patreon vote that we do every time the current Patreon game is finished. That's the most direct input you guys have. Admittedly, mostly you guys have been just teaching me why sequels exist, because lately it's been all Zelda and Myst sequels, which is a really literal window into why sequels work in the marketplace, and why we get so many sequels for franchises instead of new things, because it's clearly what people want. But that's where you can affect things directly. Everything else is just a hope and a prayer, and I'm sorry if I don't cover what you want, but I've tried multiple versions of doing that, and really the only way to cover everything is to be one of those channels that just doesn't finish anything, and I've already chosen not to be them. So you take what you can. This is 20 minutes long. What the fuck? I thought this was gonna be like 3 minutes. This is complicated. Everything's complicated. I guess this is... Hello? Enjoyed this view of my job, I guess. I'm gonna go record something now. I'm behind schedule.